Two officers in blue uniforms arrived at my garage in a patrol vehicle. From under the lift, I covertly watched them. It was unusual to see police officers appearing so jovial, but their demeanor shifted as they drew nearer. They verified my identity and delivered somber news about my wife. There had been an incident at our home, and she was hospitalized, though they declined to share specifics. Attempting to depart promptly, they questioned me for details. They sought information regarding my whereabouts over the past 3 hours. I maintained that I had stayed there all day and suggested they ask my two mechanics for corroboration. Politely, I explained that I had slipped away for 10 minutes around 11 a.m. to fetch coffee for everyone. While one officer conversed with Mike and Pete, another noted down the coffee shop I had visited. He subsequently inquired if I would show him my car. Without pause, I consented, specifying that my truck was parked outside. Guided him towards my truck, where he scrutinized it meticulously prior to approving my trip to the hospital. In the hospital, my worried expression as a staff member detailed Kate's injuries, her blood transfusion, and the ongoing operation didn't escape the doctor's attention, who gave an inappropriate half-smile during our discussion. Upon leaving the hospital, the same pair of police officers detained me again for further questioning. We retreated to the hospital cafeteria, seeking a necessary cup of coffee. They probed about my relationship with my spouse. I clarified that we met and married rather late 8 years back. Kate had a prosperous career as an attorney, yearning for children but delaying parenthood until nearly 40 in order to secure her position in her job. They asked why she was home during a weekday. I explained that Kate resigned from her job a month ago, taking a break before pregnancy, essentially having a pre-pregnancy vacation, expecting at least another 10 years of domestic life. I concluded by expressing my affection for my spouse, stating that we were doing well and eagerly anticipating the arrival of our child. Inquired about John Barton, I claimed ignorance, and they departed without responding. Believing my team had secured the garage, I headed home immediately. Upon arrival, a forensic scientist, detective, and another officer were scouring the premises. The detective identified himself, divulged their information, and posed similar queries to previous officers, plus an additional one regarding traces of blood in the downstairs bathroom. I admitted my unawareness. Curious about the intense scrutiny, I probed the detective about my status as a suspect, requesting confirmation they were exploring other options. He affirmed this, citing multiple leads and referencing his partner speaking with Mrs. Barton. Interested in John Barton? I wondered aloud. Regrettably, the detective cautioned against disclosing such information. They left me in a perplexed state. Ascended to the master bedroom upstairs, I witnessed an evolving spectacle, recognizing that I'd be taken aback if viewing it for the first time. Around 10 am at work earlier in the day, thoughts concerning intimacy began to circulate. This isn't out of the ordinary. It's said men ponder such thoughts about 67 times per awake hour, with men secluded from their wives for a month potentially doubling that frequency. Lately, Kate's conversations during hours 2 to 3 have almost vanished. She seemed in a bad mood, lethargic, or fatigued. From my perspective, her somber disposition was due to the impending demise of her normal life, causing fear. As a considerate spouse, I desired to provide her space to overcome her apprehension at her own speed. I knew parenthood would impact my life significantly, but I understood hers would be drastically altered. Throughout our early married years, our intimate moments occurred anywhere and anytime in my imagination. Regardless, we constantly strived to maintain novelty and originality as long as our creative minds thrived, eventually slipping into the routine behavior typical of long-term partners. I awoke from my stupor, recognizing action was necessary. Reignite spontaneity, rush home now and bond with Kate until you're utterly exhausted. Having made up my mind, it was time to depart and return home. I informed Mick and Pete that I would be absent for some time. Pete inquired if I could test drive the car he had recently serviced. Upon reaching home, dismay washed over me as an unfamiliar vehicle sat in the driveway. My friend's visit disrupted my plans. Nonetheless, I opted to enter. Perhaps my friend could be persuaded to depart and resurrect my plans. Unsuspectingly, I opened the front door, and a chill ran down my spine. I was aware that my marriage had reached its end. The undeniable sounds of harmonious affection echoed down the stairs. Without fail, I'd document a video whenever a client visited the garage, a defensive measure against potential damage claims. My heart raced as I hastily climbed the stairs, camera poised, peeking through the bedroom door. It was indeed Kate and an unfamiliar man grinning on our bed. Overpowering my instinct to act impulsively, I retreated. Admittedly, this was the toughest situation I've ever faced. My legs buckled, causing me to crumple outside the door, utterly shattered. Vaguely conscious of their proximity, I couldn't discern how long I lay there. Eventually, I became aware that all signs of their betrayal had subsided, leaving only voices exchanging words. It was equally painful and gut-wrenching. As I recognized the need to reflect, I knew I had to move away from the conversation. Displaying emotions would, at best, send him to the hospital and me to prison. Stealthily rising, I tiptoed downstairs and took refuge on the couch, distancing myself from the visuals, scents, and many sounds of treachery. Without emotional diversions, I did what I was adept at and hatched a scheme. To make him disappear, confront him, eject him through the back door in his underwear, and follow suit with her, all without bruises or witnesses to prevent a trial. Luckily, I had an ideal surprise weapon in my workshop. 2 years ago, serving in the Army Reserve National Guard, my abilities were recognized for clearing trucks, where I stumbled upon a handy item now. Law enforcement refers to them as stun grenades. These are slightly larger than regular grenades, with a lever pin ignition system, used primarily for hostage rescue operations. Although designed to inflict minimal physical harm, the blast is accompanied by a flash of 8 million candle power and a deafening sound of 170 decibels. The flash alone can stun an individual for at least 5 seconds. Driven by my newly developed hatred, my mind swiftly crafted the remainder of the scheme. To spare my house from destruction, I couldn't simply toss a grenade onto the floor. I extracted the explosive, promptly attached a short piece of rope to it, and fastened a loop at its end. Upon comparison, I stealthily ascended the stairs, recognizing that discretion was no longer essential. Distinctively hearing men's moans emanating from behind the bedroom door, I halted only to retrieve my phone from the floor outside the door where I had carelessly left it and peek around the doorway's frame. It was apparent that the second bout of intimacy was in progress. My spouse was fulfilling her lover, tenderly caressing him below the waist. With haste, I rehearsed the series of actions I had chosen, took a deep breath, and acted accordingly. Entering the room, I looped the rope's end around the hook affixed to the bottom of the lighting fixture, causing the device to dangle halfway towards the floor. I extracted the pin, pocketed it, and exited, clamping my fingers to my ears and shutting my eyes. Despite my precautions, the impact was palpable. I distinctly sensed the force of the explosion and the bright light reflection behind my eyelids. According to the plan, I re-entered the room, prepared for action. However, I was the one taken aback this time. I wasn't sure what I anticipated finding, but it was far from the sight that unfolded before me. Mr. Anonymous was sprawled on his back in the bed, with obvious injuries below his waist. Either fate had been unkind, or a vital component was absent. Kate was prone on the floor, her eyes vacant, mouth moving like a gasping fish. Perplexed, I retreated to the hallway to contemplate. My contemplation was interrupted by two blood-curdling screams from the bedroom, followed by loud bangs and slamming doors. It suddenly struck me that I was in grave danger. Once more, my plan had failed. Gazing into the disarrayed room, a man stumbled from his bed, gripping his groin while yelling. Kate was missing, presumed in the bathroom. We had to clean up any traces. Returning to the room, I swiftly found the detonator for the device and combined it with the rope. Uncovering nothing else, I deduced that everything else had been annihilated. I proceeded towards the bathroom warily. Kate knelt over the toilet, retching. I held no inclination to aid her. I simply didn't care anymore. As I neared the door, I noticed something on the floor and collected a warm, pliable item resembling a tongue tip. In the ground floor toilet, I discarded it. They wouldn't be able to reattach it. Trying to remain quiet, I hastened down the street, grateful once more for our separation from neighboring homes. Halfway to the garage, I dumped whatever was in my pockets into a roadside bin. 10 minutes later, I found myself back in my compact work garage. I phoned Pete and Mike, my grubby, oil-stained colleagues and confidants. They hastened towards me upon sensing my distress. I requested them to stand as guarantors for the past 45 minutes, and they consented almost in unison, replying, "Certainly, boss." However, I warned them to consider before agreeing swiftly, as what I was about to disclose was of great gravity. I voiced my reservations concerning potential accusations and the possibility of imprisonment that lay ahead. Prior to explaining the situation, I donned my old coveralls and wiped an oily cloth across my face and hands, readying myself for the anticipated arrival of law enforcement. The men appeared taken aback as I summarized the latest occurrences. Mike was the first to crack, managing to maintain his composure for mere seconds before erupting into fits of laughter. This triggered Pete, leading to a series of uncontrollable bouts of laughter among us all. It wasn't until 5 minutes later that we managed to regain our composure, and with firm handshakes and pledges of support, they returned to their greasy workstations. For the following hour, spontaneous bouts of laughter reverberated from dingy rooms throughout the house. My wife, Kate, was about to experience the repercussions for neglecting my modest friends. That night, I undertook the cleaning of our master bedroom, scrubbing the bathroom floor. I elected to dispose of the bedding and made a mental note to acquire a new rug. The tattered curtains also required removal. In an attempt to keep busy and suppress negative thoughts, the incessant phone calls and door knocking didn't offer much relief. Indeed, the media was abuzz. The blend of infidelity and a man losing his masculinity made for a tantalizing tale. I only opened the door once and promptly turned off the phone. Eventually, with no distractions, I began to ponder. Did I regret my actions? Surprisingly, no. I abhorred cheaters and had witnessed many transform into unrecognizable versions of themselves upon discovering their partner's indiscretions. Strangely, even before lunch, I was self-assured that Kate shared this sentiment. I was taken aback to find out how wrong I was. Furthermore, the reasons for Kate's infidelity left me astonished. She showed equal devotion towards me as I did towards her, and our relationship was thriving until a short while ago. However, a hint of trouble surfaced after prolonged contemplation. 2 months back, a troubling sensation gnawed at me when Kate announced her retirement to savor her final days of liberty. I expected her to work at least until the 7th month of pregnancy. Her desire for one last celebration before starting a family felt peculiar. Suddenly, my personal phone rang, an uncommon occurrence as few knew this number. The caller ID displayed Kate's parents' number from their residence 3 hours away in the same state. I answered since I always had a cordial relationship with them. After exchanging less pleasantries than usual, her mother broached the matter directly. She asked me if I was aware of why reporters were swarming their house, hinting they would eventually discover the truth. Unwilling to elaborate further, she left the rest unsaid. Did you catch the local news last night? Perhaps the main headlines? They spoke about a deceiver who dishonored her partner. I've always admired your mother's vivid speech and outlook on life, but our chat wasn't easy. Mom, take a look. There's no simple way to put this, so let me get straight to the point. The woman's name is Kate. Thankfully, my thoughts were disrupted by a scream, then a beep. Upon pressing the end call button on my phone, I saw a warning on the screen. This prompted me to recall that I had just finalized my marriage 8 hours prior, and I had forgotten my phone recording outside my bedroom door. If I never understood or accepted why Kate acted as she did, I would never trust any woman again. There was a possibility I'd live a solitary life filled with misogyny and worthlessness. With fervent hope, I started playing the video, already aware of what it depicted. The recent event was too raw to revisit the scenario. I merely blinked as I placed my phone on the ground. What followed was a sight of the room ceiling, not a graphic image. My mind filled in the picture of Mr. and Mrs. Infidelity intertwined on the bed. The audio wasn't clear, so I transferred the recording to my computer and boosted it through an amplifier for clarity. This segment held crucial parts of their discussion. Kate, it was marvelous. The past week had been quite enjoyable indeed. Is this truly the end today? My proposal remains valid. Simply give me your promise, and I'll divorce Sarah and wed you. It seems we have a plan in motion, a promising start to a marriage with a man abandoning his spouse and children. No, and I cherish Dave too deeply to cause him such pain. Additionally, he is an excellent husband and will be a good father. After today, I'll become Mrs. Goody-Goody, a homemaker at least until our youngest child starts school. You can't love him that much. It's not him who lies here next to you. No, you are mistaken. I deeply cherish him, for when I first encountered him, I instinctively recognized him as my unique soulmate, one I will never find again. Contentment fills me knowing I have such an exceptional man who indulges and cares for me, preparing to nurture me during my pregnant state due to his offspring. Truth be told, I yearn for nothing more than to expire in his embrace, basking in the presence of our grandchildren. However, the question that arises is why you are with me now. At least Kate had the decency to ponder it. A prolonged silence ensued, suggesting she was nostalgic. She didn't marry until the age of 31 and had a wild streak. She missed the freedom of entering bars, attracting various males, the excitement of leading a man on, then spontaneously deciding his fate. Recently, Dave has been going deer hunting with friends every other weekend. 3 weekends ago, she felt a longing for the past and chose to visit a bar instead. This led to an acceptable but unfulfilling night. Last Saturday, I found myself in a bar where she unexpectedly walked in. Here we are now. She seems so frigid. Consider this our farewell dance. Kate, what is she moaning about? Over here. I silenced the volume. At least I knew then that I was a capable lover and husband. The problem wasn't me. The subsequent days were filled with disillusionment. 2 days later, the reporters departed from my peaceful neighborhood. The hospital administrator contacted me, stating that Kate desired some pajamas. I had missed this one. She would have to endure those humiliating hospital gowns. 2 days later, her father phoned me. He apologized for his daughter's behavior and hoped we could stay in touch to improve the situation. He mentioned he has another daughter who recently divorced. I'm sorry, Dad, but it just feels too odd. 4 days after this incident, he was back on the news. Mr. Not So Significant has been discharged from the hospital. Reporters uncovered his infidelity and made it public. They announced with a certain degree of satisfaction that while surgeons had managed to reattach his private parts, they were unlikely to perform their intended functions again. By the week's end, an unexpected guest arrived, Mrs. Barton, or Sarah as she preferred to be addressed. She claimed she'd heard whispers about my possession of potentially helpful evidence for her divorce proceedings. I disclosed that it might indeed be true, but admitting it would put me at risk. She acknowledged my predicament and expressed her regret for inquiring. I told her I believed the mountain of circumstantial proof she had was more than enough, and if I turn out to be incorrect, I'll convince her to return, perhaps changing her mind. Her sorrow moved me deeply. Playing the video, I showed her following the large explosion's aftermath. At first, she recoiled from her husband's terrified screams, but quickly regained composure. To clarify, she didn't appear overly distraught as she departed. Being a helpful individual, I suggested she contact me when sadness returned. Indeed, I hadn't seen Sarah Barton for the last time. The most peculiar visitor since was undoubtedly the one I received on Saturday. Answering the door found me confronting the detective I'd spoken to at the scene. On that fateful day, he wore only jeans and a shirt instead of his suit. Son, I didn't invite him in. I merely told him that if there wasn't enough evidence, he should close the case. Upon hearing my gratitude, he hesitated before leaving, looking back over his shoulder. In closing, come year end, he will retire. If he returns after this, would I share how it happened? I simply smiled and wished him a good day. Tuesday saw the arrival of Kate's letter. Dearest Dave, I find it difficult to convey the depth of my regret and shame over what transpired. I comprehend your reasons for not visiting me, and I extend you an unconditional forgiveness. The gravity of the potential outcomes of my actions had never crossed my mind before. Unbeknownst to me, my parents chose to disown me. I am aware that I have irrevocably lost your affection, trust, and regard, a loss that pierces me more deeply than words can express. If you decide to cut off all communication with me, I understand. However, it may aid in your healing process if you allow me to clarify my actions. Bear in mind that the responsibility lies solely with me. Medical professionals predict that I will struggle with speech for an extended period, possibly forever, due to an accident where I severed a part of my tongue. They mention an experimental stretching method that might restore some functionality. I pray this message reaches you, allowing me some semblance of returning to my career as an escape from the monotonous, joyless, childless existence that confronts me now. Feel free to request anything in our divorce proceedings. I will comply. If by chance you could maintain me on your health coverage for a while, I would be eternally indebted. Farewell, my dear. May your life be filled with nothing but future happiness. I cannot help but wonder if I have irreparably damaged your life, my Kate, formerly known as the unfaithful spouse. The sentiment in this letter moved me so deeply that I swiftly rescinded my earlier choice and sent you hospital pajamas. Now, where can I find the numbers for Mick and Pete? Do I owe them a round of drinks, perhaps a keg?